This is Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi. Here now, Tony Bruschi.
You know, it's one thing when defense lawyers pull every trick in the book to keep their client off the stand. That's most trials. It's a whole other thing when the client, in this case, Donna Adelson, seems determined to grab the microphone herself. According to her own attorneys, Donna wants to testify. She's ready to raise her hand, swear the oath, and look the jury in the eye. And almost everyone, from legal experts to her counsel, is calling it a terrible idea. But what happens when you tell a narcissist they have a crazy, horrible idea? They double down. Why? Because that's what they do. Why is it a terrible idea? Because jurors don't always buy the act. Donna's confidence might feel like control to her, but it can come off as arrogance to 12 people who already know she was arrested at an airport with a one-way ticket out of the country. She may believe she can out-talk the evidence, but overconfidence in that setting often does more harm than good. And when you factor in her age, some even speculate about cognitive decline, whether her judgment is slipping, whether she's more bold now because of inhibition that has faded with age. But Donna taking the stand is only half of the story here. The other half is what's happening to the rest of the family around her. The fortress that once looked untouchable, the Adelsons with their money, their privilege, their carefully curated image is collapsing. Charlie's in prison for life. Donna's fighting for hers. Wendi is quietly distancing herself, prioritizing her kids instead of loyalty to her mom. And those kids, teenagers now, old enough to read the headlines, old enough to understand that their grandmother and their uncle may be remembered in history books as conspirators in their father's murders. And Harvey, he's just Harvey. He's off on the side. I don't know. We're going to Vietnam. We went there a long time ago. So the real question isn't just about Donna's confidence on the stand. It's about the ripple effect of this entire family unraveling in public view. What happens to the kids? What does denial look like inside a family where truth has been avoided for more than a decade? And how do you build on any kind of healthy future when your family's name itself is toxic? That's where I want to go next in this conversation with Shavaun Scott, because she understands the psychology of individuals and families in crisis. She even wrote a book about, the minds of mass killers. I know that Donna qualifies for that, but, it gets into the mindset. Because when someone like Donna Adelson insists on testifying, even against her lawyer's advice, what does that tell you about where her head is at right now? Let's get into it.
Yes, I completely believe that. It's for a person with this kind of personality. They see the world through a very different lens in this sort of a distorted way. And they can always rationalize and justify their choices, no matter what those criminal behaviors may be. There was a good reason for it. Mm-hmm. And when you do interviews with most people in prison, it doesn't matter what they did, they can always justify and come up with why they had to do it and how it really wasn't their fault and who else was responsible. But I think they believe their own story, and that's a defense mechanism that gets them through the day.
Let me ask you this from a psychotherapist standpoint. If you were to be sitting down with Wendi today, and let's just say, for the sake of argument, that Wendi didn't have anything to do with this. She knew her family was capable of doing this, but she didn't sign on any dotted line. She didn't give any, yes, go do this. It was just like, they talk about this stuff, but I don't think they're ever going to do it, that it actually happens. And her, for the sake of being a mother to her children, who now obviously don't have a father, grandma's in jail, the brother uncle's in jail, what would you be advising her on how to continue on with life in any sort of healthy way?
There's a lot to unpack about the family and how it impacted her development. And I would just be working with her on looking at things realistically, at getting out of the family story and individuating to be able to separate herself from this family identity, which is, as I've said, very much like the mafia, the Miami mafia or whatever. And I would have hope for her at this point. I think the fact that she's prioritizing her role as a mom and to be present for her kids rather than stepping in to automatically testify in Donna's defense, that's a good sign. And she's probably getting some help and support at this point. I think
I hope so.
Her prognosis is pretty good.
She seems to be carrying herself pretty well.
Yes.
I will definitely give her that. She doesn't come out like, oh my gosh, I'm destroyed. Obviously, I don't know what's going on the inside. This has got to be hell, especially if she didn't know anything. And we don't know that she did know anything. But also, more importantly, are there's two kids. These are not little kids anymore. Now they're in their mid-teens, 14, 15, 16-ish, in that area. And they're trying to understand all of this. This happened 11 years ago. This has been an ongoing saga most of their life, that all this has been happening. And, you know, their kids are trying to put life together, try to figure out who they are. They're probably on the internet. They're probably looking up the case. They're probably trying to understand, what does the world know about mom, about grandma, about Uncle Charlie. If they're here watching right now, and you're there and you're able to give them some advice, if you can speak to them about trying to get forward in life without letting this become a major factor that defines them, what would you say?
First of all, that none of this has anything to do with who they are becoming as individuals, and to just encourage them to see that Grandma and Uncle Charlie had problems and they had a very different way of moving through the world, but that does not have to, going forward, impact their identity and their choices and the lives that they build. And to just keep reinforcing that and letting them talk through the massive confusion that it would be very normal to have. And I would certainly want to normalize the confusion that they must have experienced growing up as little kids with all this legal stuff going on, with Grandma being in the center of it, and the losses that they've had. I mean, they've got to have a lot of anxiety, and I would just encourage them to keep talking these things through, to not hold it in, to not feel like they don't have a safe place. And the sad thing is that socially, they may feel a lot of stigma. And so I think that would be something to work on too. And, you know, it would be very normal at this point to be conflicted about how much do I want to distance as far as the family name here. Yeah. And often I see people, when they're trying to individuate from a dysfunctional family, they change their names. And I don't tell people that they should do that, but that's a very normal feeling, is I don't want to be labeled as part of this system for the rest of my life.
Quite often, as we see in these families, the enmeshed families, it goes back to protecting the matriarch or the leader or whatever it would be. And that seems to be in Donna in a lot of these ways, until people walk away. One of the uncles of the children already walked away. One of Donna's kids already living a different life somewhere else, nothing to do with the rest of them. And it just seems when you have these monster narcissists, they just pull everybody in and suck the life out of them until, you know, the source is gone. And then they move on to the next. Donna, you know, it kind of appears that that's what she's done with Charlie. That seems to be what she's tried to do with others as well. There's nothing wrong at some point of saying, yeah, you know what? You're my blood. Maybe we had some good times together. Maybe I have fond memories of you as a little kid, because Grandma, clearly, she doubted on these kids. She wanted them near her, but it wasn't for the kids' sake. It was for her sake. And that's a hard thing, I think, to understand, especially if you're a teenager, to go, well, you think this person has your best interests at heart. And on the surface, maybe they do. But deep down, it's not for the right reasons. and walking away and saying, I want nothing to do with grandma. I don't want to speak to grandma. I don't want to have anything in my life of grandma. That might not be the most unhealthy thing. I would say that's probably the healthiest thing in the world to do right now, but that's my perspective. I've walked away from monsters like this before and didn't look back. I know many people who have and didn't look back. You yourself, you walk away from those sort of things. Is that what you would advise to these kids at some point, or just let them know that it's safe, it's okay, even though you may have guilt in your family, you may have guilt yourself of how could you do that to grandma? She loved you. Mm-hmm. What would you say to that sort of comeback that these kids are going to get if they decide to try and go down that road?
Yeah, I fully support when people come to their own conclusion. I don't ever say, I think you should walk away,
sure.
but certainly if it looks like that's what they're feeling, I fully support people doing that, because it's just, again, it's the individuation process. It's seeing that you do not follow in the family footprint here. You can make your own life, build your own identity, and we do see more and more people giving themselves permission to just disengage and distance. And as I say, sometimes they'll change their name and go on and have a very different future. And it's a choice. Sometimes people can compartmentalize and still maintain, well, there was the good grandma and then there was this other side, and we didn't see the other side. So they want to hang on to the sense that there was this loving part of grandma. But I would guess in this case, it's going to be hard to do if she's convicted. So
is there anything healthy about trying to maintain some sort of relationship with grandma? Let's assume she gets locked up for the rest of her life. You can go visit her and all that. Is there anything healthy about compartmentalization and compartmentalizing your relationship with grandma, where there's this one over here and that one over there? Or is ultimately the healthiest thing just, bye-bye, grandma, you've made your choices and they're no longer part of my life?
It's a hard call, because I can see people going both ways with it. And so as long as it's not doing harm to them, if they're able to compartmentalize that well, if it's not causing harm, I support their choice. Mm-hmm. But I certainly think if it were me, I would disengage and walk away, and that would just feel better. So It really gets down to people's personalities and what's going to work for them, without feeling like they have to carry this burden forever.
And that's what I wonder. I mean, there's the feel good. The easy one would be, well, I'll keep her at arm's length and I'll compartmentalize this or that, which is probably not healthy to begin with. Is there any good there? Or is it more like, well, you're feeding the need, you're feeding the urge, you're feeding that little snack. Just wait till dinner. Like, dinner's going to be great. It's over there. Don't have the snack right now. Is it that's being fed and looking towards that immediate, I don't want to say gratification, but that immediate need for, okay, we're normal, we can talk to grandma? Because it would be a lot harder to say, I'm out, I'm done, I'm cutting these ties. But ultimately, that would probably be, if you're playing the long game, the healthiest choice for those people to make. I know it's a personal decision, but is it that sort of a thing where, there's these things like, yeah, you can manage it, but ultimately at the end of the day, the long-term prognosis is probably not to be there?
Mm-hmm. It's a hard one.
Yeah.
It's a hard one. I don't know ideally what would be the healthiest.
Yeah.
I could support either direction as long as it's not causing damage to them psychologically. Yeah. I tend to always vote in favor of reality, mm-hmm. and too much compartmentalizing can get people in trouble because it may feed the denial. But I think in this case, it would be hard for the grandkids to stay in denial if grandma is convicted and incarcerated. As you say, if they want to visit her, they're going to have to visit her in prison. So
denial's a very amazing, strong thing.
Yeah.
They got the genes to do it.
Yeah.
That's the piece of this story that cuts deeper than any courtroom strategy. On the surface, sure, we can talk about legal risks and cross-examination disasters, but underneath, what we're really watching is a family system collapsing under its own weight. Donna Adelson may believe she can talk her way out of this. Not surprising. She may believe if she just explains herself clearly enough, those jurors will see things her way, damn it. So I can see her in her cell. But history tells us otherwise. Jurors don't respond well to arrogance. They don't. Especially when it's dressed up as confidence. And then there's the fallout for the next generation. The two kids, teenagers now, growing up in the shadow of a case that has dominated nearly their entire lives. They've lost a father to murder, and now they're watching their grandmother and uncle tied to that very act. For them, this isn't just a true crime headline, it's their family legacy. And it raises the most painful question of all. How do you build an identity separate from the wreckage of your family name? Shavaun hit on something in this conversation that was very important here. The healthiest step for those kids, and Wendi herself, may be individuation. Of course it is. Breaking away, creating distance, deciding that their lives don't have to be defined by Donna Adelson's choices. That's a brutally hard thing to do, and it may be the only way forward. Because if loyalty to the matriarch is the glue that held this family together, then it's also the poison that's been destroying them from the inside out. And that's what sticks with me after this conversation. The Adelson saga is no longer just a murder case. It's a generational reckoning. It's about how much damage one person and one person's need for control can inflict, not just on the victim of the crime, but on their entire family, their own children and grandchildren. For Donna Adelson, the question is whether she'll take the stand and seal her own fate. For Wendi and her kids, the question is whether they'll finally break free and build something healthier. In the end, this trial won't just tell us about guilt or innocence. It will tell us whether survival in the Adelson family still means blind loyalty to Donna, or whether survival finally means walking away. That's where we'll leave it for now. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section on YouTube. If you're not already there, just search Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi and you will find us there. Press subscribe and please comment away so you don't miss any of our coverage on this case and the many we cover for you right here at the Hidden Killers podcast and True Crime Today. I'm Tony Bruschi. We'll talk again real soon.
Want more on this case and others? Then press subscribe now and don't miss a moment of true crime coverage from Tony Bruschi and the Hidden Killers podcast.